Hard to tell, but there are two layers here. Okay, so can you see that yellow line between the two?
Mm-hmm.
So the top layer is called your dura mater.
The top layer is called the dura mater.
Top layer is called the dura mater. And then you have that little yellow line that separates the two layers. So the top one is the dura mater, and the bottom one is the arachnoid mater.
Arachnoid mater.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then below the arachnoid is space called the subarachnoid space.
Subarachnoid space.
Which would make sense to you, right?
Yes.
Sub is below. So below the arachnoid is the subarachnoid space. And then this is the pia mater that actually clings on to the vertebrae.
Pia mater.
Mm-hmm. So dura mater, arachnoid mater, subarachnoid space, and pia mater.
And this whole thing is a vertebrae?
Yes, you have
Yes,
a
okay.
cross section of.
Just that thing is a vertebrae. Okay, that's a vertebrae.
Oh, wait a minute.
Or is it the spinal cord?
No, this is the spinal cord. This whole thing is the vertebrae. Like you see your
Okay,
bifid,
that's a vertebrae.
spinous processes and stuff. This whole thing's a vertebrae. Okay. So,
The epidural space,
the epidural space is here,
where the adipose tissue
and
is.
it's filled with adipose tissue.
Okay.
And then
Dorsal ramus.
dorsal ramus. So you guys, your landmark is going to be this big bulge, okay? This is your dorsal root ganglia. So it's coming off of the dorsal root, okay? So this is the dorsal root that swells into a dorsal root ganglion, okay? Your ventral root is down here, and it meets up and intersects with the dorsal root ganglion. Okay? So dorsal root, ventral root. Dorsal root has a dorsal root ganglion swelling at the end, right?
Yes.
And then what's inside of this is the somas, right? Because all of these things have bundles of neurons inside of them. So there's just a big bundle of neurons that are carrying the messages, right?
Yeah.
And so think of the neuron, the anatomy of a neuron. Your soma is like swelled bigger, right? Than the axons, this long skinny thing. So like the axons are down in here, and then your somas are bundled together in the dorsal root ganglion. That's why it's swollen, because it's accommodating bigger structures, right? And then once this ventral root meets with this dorsal root ganglion, it continues, but from this point down, you just call that your spinal nerve. Okay? So once you get past that dorsal root ganglion, the continuation is called your spinal nerve. And then coming off of the spinal nerve, you're going to have rami coming off of it. You have dorsal rami and you have ventral rami. What do you think this one is?
Dorsal?
No.
No, ventral.
So you guys look at dorsal, you identify because it's the end of the dorsal root ganglion. So you know this is a dorsal root ganglion. So this has got to be the dorsal root. Okay, so this is the dorsal side.
So that's the dorsal rami because it's by the dorsal root.
Exactly. It's all pointing. Dorsal and ventral is just whether it's pointing the back or the front of the body, right?
This is in the back anyway, right?
Yeah.
So that's the dorsal one.
Exactly. So this is going to be your dorsal root. This is your dorsal root ganglion. This will then be your dorsal rami.
Yes. Okay.
Ramus for singular, rami for multiple. So again, then this is the ventral root. Meets up with the dorsal root ganglion. It continues. That's your spinal nerve. And then this is going to be your ventral ramus.
Okay.
And then this, the dorsal rami are always thicker in diameter than the ventral rami. Do you know why that is?
The ganglion?
No. This is carrying, I have to refresh my memory, read about it in the book. Your dorsal rami are carrying both afferent and efferent. They're carrying neurons that carry messages to the brain and from the brain, I believe. The ventral rami, I think, are innervating the plexuses or something. So look that up in your book, but it's because